Hello and welcome. We are so excited to welcome you to Living Cities Earth experience. Please enjoy the next few minutes, and we hope that this video and the ideas from our speakers will change your life to the better. Listen carefully. What particularly talks to you? What might have a chance to change your life and lives of people around you? Also, life of your place and our planet. We believe that you, the leaders of positive change, are those who define the future. So let's work together. And thank you for coming. It was an amazing way to start our next session, our next panel discussion. So welcome everyone who is joining right now, who is watching us on YouTube and who will be watching the recorded version. I would like to welcome our panel discussion participants, all of those amazing individuals. I'm just happy and really feels very special about meeting them in this life. So I would start with Alexander Laszlo. Alexander is a world-class leader and expert in many things, including evolutionary leadership and ecosystemic learning and many other things. Of course, system sciences. Alexander was president of American Association of System Sciences and System Thinking. And Alexander, welcome. I would kindly ask you to be a co-host of this meeting whenever you feel like it. I would also like to welcome Tim. Tim is joining us from South Africa, if I understand correctly. If you haven't moved since yesterday, you're still in Cape Town, I guess, or right? Over there. And it's interesting, we have a very strong South African presence. So our next speaker, Ferial Puren, she is not in South Africa right now, but she has family links and some heritage from that part of the world. But Ferial is today in Scotland, and she's building beautiful Scotland that makes sense, as we learned yesterday, together now with Marilyn and Hamilton and other people. And Ferial is a leader in her own right. She is a leader and co-founder of several projects and initiatives which make life better for people and systems. So she will be talking today on our panel as well. Guy Eames, if you have time, you are most welcome, of course, to join us, to stay on, but that's up to you. It's according to your capacity. And I also saw that Stefano Serafini joined. He is our colleague, one of the co-founders of Living Cities Earth, a chief editor of a sort of international magazine of biourbanism. And Stefano is, I would say, one of those enlightened individuals who connects big ideas with very practical steps right now in Italy. So Stefano, you're also most welcome. But first, let me mention what is the focus of our discussion today. We've been exploring the issue of what are living cities in general, what are the happy cities, flourishing, etc., on a global scale. But right now, we have a very specific focus on how do we make a city fully alive. And about an hour ago, we've been exploring with Guy and other colleagues, what does it mean to be fully alive for us personally? So this is the first question I would like to pose to our distinguished speakers. To you personally, in your individual experience, in your family life, right? In your community life, or your business or nonprofit organizations, on a city level, to you personally, what does it mean to be fully alive? Just open your heart and tell as it is. And Alexander, if you may, I would like to ask you to come first, and then maybe Tim, Ferial, and everybody who wants to share.
Good. Thank you so much, Lev. And as we can all appreciate, Lev, thank you so much. You always bring both levity and also a good deal of leverage points. So these are what we will be exploring with you. Thank you for providing that inspiration. One thing just to mention that we really have kind of an hour here, because although we have this conversation point around the theme of exactly as Lev was saying, how do we make a city fully alive in the framework of the Living Cities exploration? Our next half hour with us, this same gang, is going to be on a more specification of this. So we've gone from how do you know that you're alive, right? What does it mean to you personally? Now we're looking at how do you make the cities fully alive, and then we're going to be going on to specifications of 7 key dimensions of that, and we'll be exploring that in the next half hour after that. So we have a beautiful hour together to explore this flow of themes. shifting hats back to me in the not the facilitator mode, but me. So I'm here in Buenos Aires, Argentina, where we won the World Cup a little while ago. I gotta keep just saying that because yeah. And what makes me fully alive is when I experience awe, when I feel like I am that super connectedness of life, but frankly, it is beyond life. It is a sense of being no boundaries, a sense of ecstasy. And that is something that I don't even want to maintain all the time because it takes me out of my presence, although it is an ultra presence connected, but it takes me out of the mundanity, shall we say. I wouldn't be able to do any localized tasks when I'm in this moment of wow. And then I'm fully alive when I'm so connected. I can approximate that in my mundane day-to-day interactions when I feel particularly connected. I use the term syntony. It is a word that is used in Latin cultures a good deal. Sintonizate, which is different from synchronizate, which would be to synchronize yourself. And to be in sync is one thing, but in syntony has a component of harmony and has a component of melody that changes over time, but changes in harmony together with whatever you're togethering. So for me, this aspect of being in syntony, in flow, but in flow not just with my own state of being, but with that which is dancing me moment to moment into existence. This is when I'm fully alive. And so what I'm particularly interested in all of this exploration with living cities is both the leverage points that can bring us into those situations where we can identify, aha, here, if I just move a little bit over into that ray of sun, wow, I can experience that syntony. Or if I come and smell that flower, I can experience that's beautiful. That's me, that's finding the leverage points. But also the nurturance spaces. And here we come to the living cities question. What are those nurturance spaces that evoke, that create the conditions for all of, not just me, but all that I'm with to have that ecstatic, connected engagement? I have gassed on for quite a bit here, so I'll pass it back to you, Lev. I'm not quite sure how you want to make the flow or help with the flow, and thank you for being back with us, Elena.
Yes, well, I suggest we just pass the word on to each other. So if Tim would pick it up from here, and then Ferial, and then whoever of our co-founders and speakers who wants to share. Tim, on to you.
Thank you so much. Yeah,
sorry, Tim. So I'm sorry. I just wanted to mention it. From Latin America to South Africa. On to you.
There we go. Yes, indeed. And that's one of the beauties of this modern age, which no doubt 10 years from now will be seen as quaint as the T-Ford is to us, because things are happening very quickly. And we won't even know who in the Zoom call is an actual real human, who is an avatar of a real human that is like sanctioned to be there, and who is completely make-believe. So we're going into a very, very interesting time. And I guess that's a little bit about this whole alive thing. So I'd as almost 100% of the time would agree with Alexander. I struggle to think of times when we don't agree, but to riff off that, to speak to my own happiness, I think it's very much connected to being in connection and in communication with something larger than yourself, whether it's an idea or a group of people or you know, whatever it is, it's larger than you, and that happiness is fed by other people's happiness. I think my most joyful experiences, if I look back in life, have been when I, in some part, have been part of somebody else's success, somebody else's happiness. So for me, it's very interpersonal. You know, it's difficult to sit home on your own and just be happy. I mean, it's doable, but there's an element to being with other people, and communing with other people, and I think that's very much what a city is about. So I was thinking about this topic before, and I was thinking, well, I mean, you have villages, and they have a certain happiness because everyone knows each other pretty much, and you know who's good at what, and so there's a community there that you don't find in the city because there's too many people. You know, you can't know everyone, obviously. But at the same time, in the village is limited to the people who are present, or the people who live there. So it can probably be a little bit boring at times. So you're trying to, how could you combine these two things? And for me, a happy city would be a city that somehow has managed to bridge that gap. So that the people that you meet, I mean, everyone's going to be a stranger, I guess, until they become friends. But that the opening, the invitation is when you meet someone is that they're a potential friend, that you could literally speak to anyone. And my mum would tell me stories about growing up in London, and he said, well, like in those days, if you left your purse on the bus, you know, it would still be lying there, because there was a degree of trust and coherence, and London was a big city in those days, you know, which doesn't exist today. So I think a happy city would be based on trust. And living in Cape Town, it's almost like the anti thesis of that, because there's such scarcity, such everyone has to hustle. Not everyone, but most people have to hustle to survive. We spoke about Maslow's hierarchy. You know, not a lot of people have the option of actually exploring the higher levels because they're still fighting on the lower levels. Yeah, I think it's a lot about not just creating spaces, but creating opportunities, and to create opportunities for people to be people, to trust each other. That takes a lot of work. There's a lot of trauma that needs to be healed. So, but anyway, that was very meandering, but take it for what it is, and I shall think pass it on to you, my almost fellow South African Ferial.
Yes, so thank you so much, Tim. And I would say that I am more than just a little bit South African, by the way. After living for 20 years in Scotland, I still am a South African citizen. I never traded that one in. So yes, I'm a little bit more than just a bit South African. What I would say is, so being a bit South African, and my forefathers would have been, came from Indonesia, Java to be particular, a little bit of Arab thrown in there, and a little bit of Indian. And so now living in Europe for two decades, I would say that's probably for me what I would say is the joy, that happiness, that is all of it. It's the whole experience of life. I don't know, for me, when I talk about happiness, and it's been the last years of my life where even sadness to me is happiness. I don't know how to say, it's like that experience of being alive, right? Of having to journey and having to adventure. So I'm an adventurer, right? I love traveling to different countries. I love observing life, people, things. So for me, it's about tasting the food and smelling everything. And yes, it is about the experiences that Alexander talks about that takes my breath away and that I'm awed by, right? But it's also just, it's not just that for me. It's also even the hard stuff, the stuff I get to sit and cry with others over, and I get to feel into their pain and feel into and help them navigate and help myself navigate, you know, a world that is complicated, I guess. But it's almost like for me, it's this grand challenge and I love it. So yeah, that's what I think is happy. Happy for me is embracing the whole darn thing and having a ball while doing it. And one of my things I like saying is that I want to live the hell out of life. So I think that's it for me.
Ferial, it's very interesting. Before I got to meet you, Alexander shared some notes from you, and I said, wow, this is an amazing person. And Alexander wrote, well, this is the way she is. And it sounded very interesting to me. This is the way she is, because there is so much power in this short sentence. And now that I got to know you, this is the way you are. That's true. This is the Ferial's way. So this is beautiful. And I would like to respectfully correct, we are not talking today about happy cities. That's an interesting point. We are talking about how we create living cities. Of course, it creates some aspects of happiness, for sure, but it's so much more. And many people asked us, why? Because we are called Living Cities Earth, and when we were choosing the name for this organization a while ago, we considered, of course, many different names, integral city and this and that, but we thought, well, what's most integral in life? Is it happiness? Is it awareness? Is it sustainability? Is it some? And we realized the most integral thing in life is life. There is nothing more encompassing than life. And because we are about the integral approach, integral thinking, sort of holistic view of people, communities, cities, the planet. So that's where this name came from, one of the reasons at least. And so as we move forward in this session, I would respectfully ask us to really focus on this particular issue, how to be fully alive on an individual level, on a group level, on a systemic sort of city level. So thank you very much, Furiel, for all the energy and aliveness which you bring. And I will pass the microphone, so to say, to Elena, and then maybe Guy, and if Stefano wants to join later on. So what makes you and people and systems around you fully alive, Elena?
Thank you. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to rejoin even just a little bit. I will have to get off again on the hour. Today, so much is happening, but this is all very precious. And I really appreciate the question that you're asking, because it makes me realize, and it brings fully into focus for me what makes me feel fully alive. Certainly, life is an amazing mystery. And there's so much awe to be experienced in every facet of life, no doubt about that. But what makes me feel fully alive, and what I think makes most of us feel fully alive, is when we have opportunities to give to the maximum, when we're able to really give to others and bring joy and bring connection and bring more hope, and really bring out the strengths and the best in others. That's what makes me feel fully alive. When I feel that I'm co-creating something with fellow human beings, overcoming the legacy of hopelessness, of dead ends, of just desperation, which is so pervasive. So I would say working with others to create us and to create opportunities in the midst of corruption, of climate crisis, in the midst of real governmental impasse, that makes me feel alive. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Elena. By the way, if you provide us with your phone number, we'll be able to connect you to the speaker's chat, so you could see more information and join further discussions. And on to Guy Eames. Guy, you are such an active person. What makes you fully alive, and what makes people around you fully alive?
Well, Lev, I'm certainly very much alive when there are people around me who are very much alive. When I feel that I'm in a sort of on my own, then I'd start to feel that I'm like the odd man out, you know. So I've always been like that. It's like at school, if you have a really inspirational teacher, then you get really interested in the topic and you start to learn up about that. And if everybody's inactive around you, then you start to feel really sort of, you know, tired and inactive. So for me, a living city, or living city, is a place where there are active people who want change, who want to make positive things happen. I would say that in any society, there's this golden rule: as about 5% of the population. If you have 5% who are active and want to do something, that's enough of a catalyst to create change in that town. These are people who take an active position. who get up in the morning with an attitude and really want to make things happen. People who are ready to spend some of their extra time, like we are sitting here at the weekend, or who make time for meetings. They don't just say, "Oh, my calendar's full, I'm not going to meet." You know, they'll go out. They'll have the meeting at 6 o'clock in the evening. They'll have it at 9 o'clock in the evening. They'll meet up at the weekend. They'll combine friendship with business. They'll invest some of their time in not-for-profits and they don't just look at every single hour as being something which has to be built. It's so these are the people who make things happen. For me personally, a living city is a town, as I said, of positive people, but it's also because I work in the sort of green building space. It's a city which is inspiring in terms of the built environment around you. So there are ways to build positive and good cities, and there are ways not to build good cities. And especially with today's climate change, a lot of cities can be really uninviting and really they're just depressing. You just look around you and you think, oh my God, there's just roads here everywhere. There's just tarmac everywhere. Or there are buildings which are sort of in a bad state in the middle of town, which just sort of depress you when you see them. But there are also towns where those bad buildings have been replaced with a really nice building, or the roads have been replaced by pedestrian areas and new types of green building solutions that have been brought in, or companies have come in with a really inspirational, amazing building. And these are like beacons of hope. I visit so many towns around the world, and in each of those towns that I visit, there are some beacons of hope. There are people out there who are making change. There's some of these 5% who are inviting, who are hospitable, who are ready to meet you. You go to their town and they're saying, yes, let's meet. Instead of, oh, let's look at my diary. Oh, maybe in 2 years' time, we may be able to meet someone. There's like, yes, let's meet, who bring the right people together, and the environment around us, which provides this sort of beacon of hope. So that's for me a living city. I think that human beings are actually capable of adapting to almost anything. You see people living in the Arctic, you see people living on the equator, you see people living in the tiny little islands. People are able to adapt if they're given time, and if they have the willpower to make that happen. And as we've heard earlier, the opportunity to make that happen. But of course, we also create our own opportunities to some extent. Yeah. So that's for me a living city.
Thank you, Guy. We're still in the process of discussing what makes us fully alive. We'll come to the city level in our next round. And I wanted to check if Stefano wants to share. He is always very busy with his family and other sort of projects, but every time he opens up, it's a sort of a treasure and a pleasure.
I'm here. Thank you. I'm here mostly for listening to what interesting people is telling about this subject. That is key to my research. I would like to add only one thing, because nobody talked about that. It's about my experience of silence and connection with nature. So I feel full alive when I get out, So the city needs a border, and this border must be with nature. I feel fully alive when I can get there and leave me all the fuss back and sit on a rock and listen to the chirp of the animals around and the sun going down, etc. So I think that's an aspect of biophilia that is key to the engagement in a city, because this brings us back to this circular sense of time that we tend to lose because of the dominance of a culture that is about, this Eurocentric culture. I would say North European centric culture. It's about this arrow of time, where time can be set in pieces because it's money and we have to produce, and the more we produce, the more we are happy, blah, blah, blah. That's not like that in Italy, it's not like that in Greece, it's not like that in Africa, it's not like that in China. So this connection with the circularity to me is fundamental.
Wow, thank you very much. Thank you. I will add my perspective as well, and then we'll move on to the second sort of round. So what makes me and people around me fully alive? I use, among other things, very simple model of six elements of a human existence or human being. The first one is our body. So I feel fully alive when my body is healthy. I won't go deeper, but basically, when I'm not very healthy, my experience of aliveness goes down as well. The second part of human experience next to the body is our subtle energy. So when my subtle energy channels are open and free and the energy is flowing through, I feel fully alive. When there are blockages, when there are issues, definitely the experience is very different. So I do work with yoga, with qigong, with other sort of approaches. I do work with my subtle energy body as well. That's number two. Number three is my identity. Who I am, how do I see myself? And I discovered that the more specific I'm about, the more aware I am of who I am in this world, the more energy is coming through and the more fully alive I feel. So the identification and my identity and being true to my identity is very, very important. Who are we? The fourth part is my intelligence, my cognitive and other type of intelligence. And also I discovered that when I'm fully awake from this standpoint, I experience life in so many more, dimensions. And I have this life experience in a very, very rich way. The next one, the fifth one, is my soul, right? My transmaterial part of my existence. And when I'm connected to my soul, I have an incredible experience of everything which happens to me, be it as I think Ferial mentioned, positive experiences or negative experiences. If I am fully in touch with my inner self, my soul, I experience everything as a flow of beautiful, beautiful life which changes but still presents its richness to me. So that's number 5. And number 6 is my spirit, or actually the spirit, the universal spirit, which is sort of, we use the word inspired, and inspired is having spirit inside of us, so being connected. So when I'm connected to spirit, life opens up in so many different ways. And I just mentioned those 6 points. So the body, subtle energy, my sense of identity, my intelligence, my soul, and my spirit. So when I'm fully aware and fully connected to those 6 dimensions in my sort of individual experience, then I feel fully alive. And it's interesting that if we move to the group level, like a family or an organization or even a city, the same 6 dimensions exist there as well. There are many other models, of course, it's just a very simple structure. But when I work with cities, or when I just experience cities in France, in Europe, in Latin America, in Africa, anywhere, in Asia, I look at those 6 elements. Does the city have a soul? But we'll come to this discussion basically in a second. And so let me ask you kindly from a Tim in South Africa, to Ferial in Scotland, to Alexander in Latin America, to Guy in Eastern Europe, and whoever, I think Elena is also in Eastern Europe, if she would be able to join us, and Stefania is in Southern Europe, the beautiful Italia, Bella Italia. Now thinking about those larger social systems, right? 10,000 cities, so different. We had some speakers from UN Habitat today, from Tunisia and Nigeria, and they said the life experience is so different in those countries. There are so many extremely poor people, migrants, other difficult life conditions. They just don't have the capacity to think about sustainable planet. They would love to, but they don't have the capacity, right? And the reason I mention this, but despite our being poor or sick or anything, we can experience this experience of being alive. It doesn't depend on our level of material wealth, our family situation, etc. So my question to you is, moving to this larger system of a city, how can we support creating cities which are fully alive? What's your take on this? And if I could, I'll ask Ferial actually to speak first, because there is so much energy which is moving through you. I would really love to give you the floor, and please share, what do you think about this? We need to.
I'm muted, yeah. So thank you so much, Lev. That was beautiful. Thanks for what you shared. And I really thought about this. I thought about what because very often I know that there's a lot of things. And so part of my work is working in various different areas. I work with immigration policies, and I work with justice, areas of justice, and so many other things, in my own city and my own country, or the country I'm a resident in, Scotland. But at the same time, I'm always somebody that likes the idea of being able to leverage something, right? What is the thing you can push over and can perhaps create massive kind of impact from there? And so I was thinking about this, and I realized that so much revolves around what we believe, what we value, and what we celebrate. So for me today, being Earth Day, I thought about this as one, and I realized if we truly believe that Gaia has a consciousness and that we are all parts of a beautiful, grand creation story, then I think we would stop asking what the world needs from us, but we would begin to trust the wisdom of collective creation that we're a part of. And so I love something that Howard Thurman, a philosopher, once said. He said, don't ask yourself what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive, and go do that. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive. So this really, really hit me. And so much of my own work, I often write about what makes you come alive. I've created lots of things around programs around what makes you come alive because of that statement. So in other words, I would say we need to seriously nurture environments where people can express themselves authentically. Not environments and education processes that prepares them for these kind of sausage machine things, the factory workers and soulless producers and contributors. I think I said yesterday in one of the other talks that Deloitte Shift Index survey revealed that 80% of people did not like the way they express themselves into the world. Now, can you imagine us creating and being alive from that space? We're not. So I think we need to nurture environments where we can contribute and also make a living from what flows out of us. So why do I say this? Because each human is not just this is what I really thought about. We're not just this random expression of nature. I think it was Saeed that kind of brought this to our attention yesterday. We are evolutionary processes. We are the result of millions of years of evolution. I was picked. You were picked to be here in this moment to represent humanity. So what does that mean? That means that I've been given some stuff to be here. So we've been, I think, carefully selected by nature. And all that we've learned and observed about nature, I would say suggests that nature is not biased. She selects and designs for optimal thrivability of life. So the bigger question for me became, can we trust this creation and integration process? So you see, the moment that we truly come alive, as Howard Thurman suggested, to what is kind of innate and what wants to naturally be nurtured and flow from us, we come into a flow, which is that we align ourselves to co-create with nature. So we're not now working against it. And I think this, for me, would be how cities come alive. And from that space, that happy, alive things, so much else, so much other beauty begins to blossom. So in essence, I'm saying we are the key. Can we create an environment where we can express ourselves fully and authentically? Can we turn on that ability to come alive to that innate, I call it my use. So I call it my unique sacred expression, right? And this unique sacred expression flows when we in that flow, then we in the flow of sacred design. And this has been embedded in us through millions of years of wisdom finding research, strategy, and prototyping that nature has been doing through every human that has come before us, and not just every human, but every other species, right? So what we are doing now is I think very often wasting that potential within us by trying to control this process so much, right? You know, like you should be doing this or doing, but can we not create a space where we can actually express what is really wanting to come out of us? Right. And some of us in this room, we've been there where we've been kind of pushed into careers and things where it stifles everything inside of you. And again, our research is showing us 80% of us hate what we do. So it's clear. Can we flip that one domino? Right. And perhaps, you know, that we tap into that potential within us. And I think that the knowledge is being connected into the whole, because that's what it allows us to do. When we start to really flow, it's not from just what we know, because what we actually know as individuals, or even as a collective at the moment, is very little. But into the whole, all of a sudden we're tapped into an intelligence that is ancient, that is constantly emerging and connecting into everything. So that's what I'd add. I'd say, can we create spaces where we can authentically express ourselves? Because that to me would be a city that is alive, because the people are alive.
Thank you very much, Ferial. Your power and your energy really fills our space here. And if I could pass it on to Tim, so from Northern Europe to South Africa, across the planet. Tim, how do you feel, based on your experience in different parts of the world, what makes a city fully alive?
Well, I've been in cities that have been more vibrant than others, and more alive than others. And I think there are a number of reasons why cities are so. I grew up pretty much in Stockholm. I was born in Vancouver, but I was too young to have a real connection to that city. So I grew up in Stockholm and lived most of my adult life there. And that is a city that is very clean, very well functioning, and very nervous. It's like very trendy, and I found it to be a little bit limiting. And I know that, like, if you go to the south of Sweden, you go to Gothenburg, or even go down to Malmö, that there's a whole different type of energy there. So cities have energy, and I'm not sure where it comes from. The nervousness might come from being the capital, or it could come from other factors, you know. And when I came to Cape Town, and Cape Town is many cities in one, but I came to Cape Town, there's an entirely different energy here, and why I enjoy living here, I think, is because there is a vibrancy, there is an aliveness in Cape Town, and if you look at it in an image, you know, you see this great mountain, you know, in the center of the city, and everything is built around and spread out, and then there are more mountains, and then you have the Atlantic on one side, and then you have this bay coming in with warm water coming in from the Indian Ocean. So there are like these currents are moving, and you live in the city, and you know, you can go running in the mountains, you can go climbing mountains, you can go swimming in the ocean, and you don't have to drive far to be in a desert. So that this invites a vibrancy, a flow of energy, but it's also a city that is severely traumatized, and a nation that's severely traumatized. The amount of atrocities in this city, I don't know if it's second to none, but it's definitely top 10. Because first was I'll look at all these beautiful houses, you know, with these old Victorian styles, and it's such a quaint city to walk around. But then there's an area called District 6, which was the last area, I think, that in the 70s that the apartheid government decided that no, we are going to, you know, claim this for rich white business owners. And this had been like this beautiful space of the epitome of Cape Town, with people of all colors and races and denominations, living together, and the city said no. And people were just forcibly, the truck showed up one day and you like load everything you want to take and you're leaving, and then they were just put into these tiny little communal houses where they left the house with their own family and now they had to share a 40 square meter house with another family that they didn't necessarily know. And these were all built without any character on land, on sand dunes, basically, so you couldn't grow anything. And it's heartbreaking when you visit the District 6 museum, because this is in the 70s. I mean, I was a child in those days. This was not a long time ago. This is not a different era. Like, this is my lifetime. To see how, and as a symptom of how this flow was broken up, this natural communion of humans. And then replaced with these ritzy-looking, quaint houses that, as a tourist, you go around and think this is nice, but you don't actually know that the blood and trauma it's all built on. And like as you travel from, and I live I live in this beautiful old area called Observatory. It's the oldest observatory in Africa. It's just like a stone's throw away from where I live. So the whole area is called Observatory. I live in a house that probably belonged to an old admiral or general or something, because the entire area was built by the British military in the early or late 1800s, early 1900s, to house military staff, which was obviously like when the British Empire was occupying South Africa. But you don't have to go far. I took my parents for a walk and took a wrong turn and found myself walking across a bridge with homeless people shooting drugs. And I was like, oops, this was the wrong turn to take, before you manage to get out into one of these open spaces. So there are all these little nooks and crannies of trauma. And then there are huge spaces of trauma. And I don't even want to share the stories of what it's like growing up in what they call townships, informal settlements, and you can also see the crime, the violence of growing up in that space. So this trauma is inherited. So I feel it's very juxtaposed, everything in this city, which is why it's valuable to live here, because you can go out and have an amazing meal at a 5-star restaurant, and then on the way back home you'll get robbed because you have a telephone. That is something all in a day. And that's a lucky day. So I feel like there is a flow of energy, and that flow was manifesting, but the flow was broken by the governments that have lived here. And I live exactly where the Khoi people, the Khoi, who were the original inhabitants and possibly the oldest people, ancestors to us all, live in this space. And when the Portuguese came here, this was the first battle that the D'Almeida, who was this great Portuguese admiral who laid waste to Goa and was incredibly brutal leader. They landed in the Cape, and then some of the soldiers had issues with the local population, and they went to talk the admiral into reprimanding them, which was killing a whole bunch of people. It actually turned out the other way around. The Khoi, together with the cattle, managed to completely obliterate D'Almeida and 9 or 10 of his captains, and sent the Europeans packing back to Europe. And they didn't come back for another 110 years when the Dutch arrived and then took over. So it's a space, they say, this mother city, and it's a mother with a lot of trauma. So I think, to speak to what Ferial spoke to, there's so much we need to do to deal with trauma in this collective way, because until we have released that trauma, I don't think we can be living. But once that trauma is released and the energy can start flowing again, I think there's no end to the kind of life and vibrancy we can experience. So yeah, that's me. I'm gonna get off my soapbox.
Wow, how deep. Without healing the trauma, difficult to be fully alive, right? Alexander, what's your take on it and overall?
Thank you. Well, things are very similar here in Buenos Aires, Argentina, to what Tim described. And, you know, I spent a lot of time in New York City as well. And any large metropolis, large cities, and we were talking about these things, tends to have full spectrum humaning. And some of that humaning is not the kind of humaning we want. In other words, it's not truly, as I would call it, humaning. It's actually more, I don't want to say animaling, because animals do things a lot better than we do, but it's brutalizing, let's say. So yes, being aware of our surroundings, and I think this comes to something Ferial was saying, how do we build, create, foster, garden, truly, in our cities, garden, those areas that allow us to be in trust, with ourselves, with each other, with what's around us. If you have to walk around when you cross that bridge with all your senses alert, like Tim was saying, and okay, I just have to be careful. Where's my phone? Is it visible? It shouldn't be visible because I could get attacked if it was. So how am I walking? Am I on the right side of the street? Did I give a wrong glance to those people? Could they be offended? Ooh, okay, you know, those are the kind of things which, if you have city smarts, you need to develop, because in a large city of the sort that Tim was describing. So how do we create those environments where we are, when we can thrive together, we can relax together? We were just talking about what brings us fully alive. And in that, we were talking about the sense of awe, sense of ecstasy, sense of connectedness, the sense of, you can't do that when you're guarded, when you're like afraid, when you're not in trust. Awe only comes when you release to full trust to the moment, full trust in that moment. You open your heart, your mind, your very being. You are indeed truly vulnerable when you're in a state of awe. That vulnerability is a vulnerability to love, to life. It's needed. When you're guarded and closed and need to be, you know, and scared, traumatized, or afraid of being traumatized, this is not fully alive. It is quite the opposite. Our cities can create conditions for both experiences. How do we optimize that? I think Ferial spoke beautifully to that as well. And I want to, for a rare time, actually disagree with her on something. We really don't disagree, but hey, I'm going to disagree because, but she'll see it's not really disagreeing. She said nature is not biased, right? Nature is going to just allow for whatever to emerge. I disagree. I think nature is biased. I think nature always creates conditions for coherence. We don't always see those conditions or move with those conditions, but nature does create conditions for coherence and embeddedness. This is the system's frame. Sorry, there's a little bug here. I'm swimming through my bug. You're welcome to be with me, bug, just not in my face. So systems do create those, nature does create those conditions always for connection, for coherence, and for embeddedness. I like the word embeddedness because it's kind of like you can snuggle, snuggle up and be embedded. We don't always take those conditions, especially if we're in survival mode. We were talking about yesterday with Said about Claire Graves' frameworks of spiral dynamics and how if you are down in the beige meme, the survival mode, you don't have that luxury of searching for coherence and embeddedness. You're just looking out for survival. So rather than going on for too long here, Ferial also talked about the sacred design of nature. This for me is exactly what we can tune into. How do we tune into that? I'm going to share this little image here in our chat. And this comes back to my sense of being alive, right? Considering life as sacred, non-hedonistic, aesthetic ecstasy. and creating those conditions. The reason it's non-hedonistic is simply because otherwise it's just doing whatever makes me feel good in the moment. That's purely hedonism, right? So how is this something that is sacred, ecstatic ecstasy? How can we create those moments where a bell goes off inside us because everything is aligned beautifully with the universe? And for me, lastly, because I'm talking too long here, is in order to create spaces where we can authentically human well, and again, Ferial was speaking to that so powerfully, to be able to understand the city, as Tim was saying, as, you know, with different energies, as a whole creature. There's a wonderful book by Wendy Wheeler called The Whole Creature. And she looks at things like the murmuration of starlings and things that look like they're a being in themselves, but they're made up of smaller beings, like the starlings, the birds. But when they fly together, they flock together, it looks like a being in the sky, because there's such coherence. Right? How can we do that? And Wendy Wheeler explores this very, very beautifully in that book, The Whole Creature. And I think part of it, Lev touched on the notions of the 6 different ways of checking in to see if you're fully aligned, right? And he says these can also be aligned with the city. I love that. And it's an and. One is to have checklists and to be able to check in to see if it is on and the other is to dance, to engage in celebration, not only to check in to see if you're thriving along all certain list of dimensions of being and interbeing, but also to celebrate together, to dance together, to have sacred fun. How do we create those spaces? And I think we carry them with us like a snail carries its shell. We carry them with us moment to moment. And we can create those spaces by taking care of our engagement with others around us, the communities that we build. It has a ripple effect. How do we ripple out with others in our engagements? And for me, this is key on that. I do also have 5, let me really quick, 5 dimensions, and many of you know this. It has to do with the first dimension of this dance is with yourself. Are you being coherent and thriving with yourself? The second dimension is expanding out to be dancing with others. Are you coherently dancing in this sacred space with others? Or are you in dysfunctional relationship? Are you playing games? Is there sabotage going on? So on. The third dimension is with nature, with the more than human world. Are we dancing well and being danced by? The cats, the dogs, the trees, the air, the water cycle. Are we in that dance as well? These are all conversations. The fourth dimension is, are we in good conversation and healthy dance with our ancestors? And with those not yet born, but not only of our species, with all those not yet born. Are we in, this brings all the 3 previous dimensions into diachronic relationship over time, that coherence of time. And the 5th dimension is, are we in sacred relationship with the cosmos, with the deeper dimensions of spirit and emergence? And how are we dancing and being danced, recognizing that life on Earth is one part of a grand narrative in this universe? Cities are within there someplace. Passing it back to you, Lev.
Thank you very much. I invite Stefano and Guy to join if you feel like it. And otherwise, we would go to some conclusions of our short session. We have about 6 minutes before the next topic starts. So if Stefano or Guy wants to manifest their voices, very welcome. I'll count to 3. 1, 2, 3. And I have, we have both of them, huh? You see?
Liv, I'm still here, but I think the next session is probably more appropriate one, and I've got more to add to the next one. So I'll pass over to whoever else you've got on your panel. I said quite a lot today already.
Stefano also switched on his mic. So Stefano, on a city level, what makes a city fully alive from your perspective?
I don't really know. I'm looking for that, I really don't know. So there are many little things that make city alive, but it's difficult to say that there is a kind of magic formula, magic bullet for that. Maybe in synthesis, one can say connection to your neighbor, connection to nature, connection to the landscape. Connection means nothing so mystical. Seems little things where you can get out of your house and you have a smile from your neighbor, for example. It's a little thing, but this makes the city alive, where you can trust somebody, where you have a common civic language. You can build together a common project. All these things seems like a fairy tale nowadays, because it's really difficult to find that, especially because cities are not anymore organisms. They have been disconnected from themselves. All the organs that allow a city to be alive are being displaced around the world. For example, the city of Rome import food from Holland, for example, or something like that. And this means that the landscape of Rome is not anymore nourishing for the city, and there is a disconnect. So maybe connection could be a path to follow to find this way of making cities more alive.
Thank you very much, Stefano. And I also will add my perspective, sort of completing the circle. So working with the cities for last 10 years, never expected. I never thought about cities in my life before. I was really working with people and organizations. And when I was invited in 2013 by a local mayor to help them develop the strategy for the city, because I was director for strategy at large companies before, and he was sort of wondering how to do it on a city level. Until then, I always thought that a city is managed by this, a mayor, city council, they do something they have to do, and we live our life, and city is not part of our life. I mean, we are sort of in the city, but we are not responsible for the city. That was my unenlightened perspective at the time. And so when they invited me, and I invited some other colleagues and friends, and we created the City Leaders Association, which really became a transformative experience for all of us, we discovered that to make a city fully alive, number one, I agree with what Ferial has said, and the team, Stefano has just shared, and Alexander. So all of those perspectives I definitely subscribe to. And also what we noticed is that it's taken personal responsibility. One of those many aspects. It's when because there is no city just outside of human experience, right? There are always people who inhabit the city and actually co-create the city. So in our experience, it's when you being alive, you have enough capacity of your spirit, of your intelligence, of your heart, of your, soul, of your energy, of course, of your body, right? If you are sick and sort of dying or just able to take care only of yourself, then you cannot support the larger systems. So in our experience, you need to take care of yourself, as Marilyn Hamilton always says, the Master Code of Care, to take care of yourself, to be able to take care of people around you, to together be able to take care of your place, like a city, to together all those cities to take care of our planet. So that's our experience as well, that to make the city fully alive, first, I need to take care of myself. Because if I don't have free energy and capacity to share, not much I will be able to contribute. But when we have this free, sort of expendable, shareable energy, including ideas and action energy, etc., then we really start to engage with this larger system, to think about where is it going, what's the future, right? What's the image of the future? What's the strategy to get there? Who are the actors? Because there is no strategy without the people who take responsibility for the strategy. It's just dead documents, and there are many of them in the world, worldwide. So we discovered that the most important are the people who come together and they take responsibility about the city, because one person can change many things on a city level. You need to have a group of leaders who start to create this cohesiveness, right? And also take responsibility for engaging other people into this collective thinking and collective action. So to add my specific point to the group discussion as we finalize, to make the city fully alive, I start with myself, Then I create a group of people who are fully alive, who are in good communication, good connection. And then we work in many different areas, in infrastructure, in culture, in education, many other things, to really support the systems, processes, the culture on a city level, right? Which would bring, as I think Farrell mentioned, the best out of every person, to allow everybody to be himself or herself to the full degree. And then the cosmic sort of universal energy really flows through us. We don't need to be anything we are not, right? It's just by being who we really are on individual and collective scale, we become the channel for the life energy to manifest to the fullest potential. That's my quick take on it. And I would like to thank everyone who contributed to this discussion. And we are really spread throughout the world, Eastern Europe, North United Kingdom, South America, South Africa, Northern America, and let's see. Yes, that's about it. So big thanks to all of us who shared their perspectives on what does it mean to be fully alive on a personal, group, and systemic sort of city level. And I invite everybody who is interested to join our next panel discussion, and we'll explore some particular areas. What does it mean to build a community? What does it mean to build an education and learning ecosystem in a city? What does it mean to create a green building and eco infrastructure in a city? And many other topics as we join our next session. Thank you very much for this experience so far. Wow, you have made it. You just watched amazing insights from experts of Living Cities Earth ecosystem. We welcome you to the Living Cities Earth experience and hope that we are going for a long ride as we take care of ourselves, our communities, our cities, and our planet. Thank you and welcome.